Greetings, citizens. Hey you beautiful creepy human being you. Welcome to my channel and welcome to today's true crime video. I'm so happy we could meet like this. I'm so happy that somehow in all of this that we're forced to deal with on the day today, you and I were able to find each other on this crazy little planet that we call home. My name is Brittany or Bratterstein, whichever you prefer, and today we're going to be discussing the stalking and murder of 33-year-old podcaster Zohreh Sadeghi and her husband, 35-year-old Milad Naseri. But before we get started, if you have not yet had the pleasure, please make sure to join the Brat Pack by subscribing and ringing that bell. I put out a new video every single week, sometimes 2 a week, and I would love to hang out with you. Yes, you, specifically you, but I can only do that if you join the Brat Pack and become one of us. One of us, one of us, one of us. Now, before we get into the details of today's case, I first need to say a big thank you to the sponsor of today's video, and that is June's Journey. If you've been here before, if you've been here a while, you've heard me talk about June's Journey before, but if you're new or you're unfamiliar, don't you worry, you're about to get familiar with June's Journey. June's Journey is a hidden object mystery game, and the objective of the game is something that is right up my alley and probably right up your alley too, if you are watching, this video in my true crime channel. So basically the objective of the game is to follow June because, it is her journey after all, while she goes home. And she goes home because there's a tragedy in the family when her sister is murdered by her husband, so June's brother-in-law, in an alleged murder-suicide. But when she gets there, she's like, I don't know if I believe that actually. And her objective, or our objective in the game, is to find out what really happened. And also to customize and remodel our giant mansion on our garden island, in between solving a mystery. If you've been here before, you know that at the end of a long day of mom and I love to play a game on my phone. And this is a great one for me after my baby goes to bed because it's okay. So look, there's these beautifully curated scenes and you're looking for the hidden objects and the mystery items. And they actually make you work for it. I will give you a close-up right now so that you can see, but they make it difficult to find the objects. Not so difficult that you can't, but not so easy that you feel like you're kind of wasting your time. You know what I mean? I have literally had to call my husband in for a fresh pair of eyes when I'm looking too long because it really makes your brain work, which I need because with a toddler, my brain is basically a bowl of jello. So while playing June's Journey, I can work my mind and still be able to relax. And with each clue, it takes you one step closer to solving the murder of June's sister and brother-in-law while uncovering family secrets along the way and getting out of tricky situations in witty ways as only June can do. And the best part, of course, is all this fun is for free. You can download the app on Android, iOS, Facebook. I obviously have it on my phone here. Sorry, I'm looking for the doily. I obviously have it on my phone here, so it's super handy for me, but you can download it anywhere for free. So if you would like to help solve a 1920s murder mystery, because truly, who wouldn't want to do that? Then make sure to click the link in my description box or scan the QR code on the screen. But make sure to go through my link or my QR code to let them know I sent you. And then you can download June's Journey for free and join in on all the fun today. Now, I just want to say a big thank you to June's Journey for sponsoring today's video. It's sponsors like June's Journey that make it possible for me to put out videos as consistently as I do. And a big thank you to you guys for always being so supportive of all of my sponsors. You rock. Don't ever change. Alright, now that I'm done begging you to join my cult, we can go ahead and get into this video. Now, this video is on a case that is pretty recent. This actually happened in March of 2023. And basically what happened here is that Zohreh and her husband were terrorized by a man who became obsessed with Zohreh after discovering her podcast. He was listening to her podcast, he became infatuated with her, became obsessed with her, and despite the fact that this couple did everything they could to protect themselves from going to police and getting a restraining order, this man still crossed state lines, broke into their house, and murdered both of them. It is horrifying and honestly, very scary. So today I'm going to tell you that entire story. I read all the things so that you do not have to, and at the end of this video, I want you to answer the question of the day. I'm going to give it to you now so you can have it kicking around in your brain as we go through the details, but obviously I want you to answer when you have something to go on. But in this case, maybe you don't even need to hear all the details. It's just I want to know, how do you think things like this happen? How does a person get to the point of obsession like the man did in this case? Because there are some situations where I'm it still doesn't make sense because none of this will ever make sense and there's never a justification. But often you'll see that in stalking cases, they feel like they had nothing else. This is the only thing they had. So when they lost that, it was kind of like they lost everything. But in this case, that doesn't seem to be the situation. Like, he did seem to have other things going for him. So I'm just curious what you think is the reason that things like this happen. Let me know all your thoughts in the comments below after we go through the details of this case. Now, with all of that said, come gather around and let me tell you the story of the stalking and murder of 33-year-old podcaster Zohreh Sadeghi and her husband, 35-year-old Milad Naseri. Our story today begins at just after 1:30 in the morning on March 10th, 2023. Police responded to a call of a hostage situation and an undetained gunman that led them to a home in the 16700 block of Northeast 89th Street in Redmond, Washington, which is about 15 miles east of Seattle. It was weird for police to go to this area for this type of crime because this was a very nice area. It was described as an upscale suburban neighborhood, and the home they were going to was valued at like $1.5 million. So this was a super nice area that didn't see a lot of crime like this. So police arrive on the scene and immediately they know that something terrible has happened here because as they enter the home, they see 35-year-old Milad just laying on the ground, like inside the doorway, suffering from a gunshot wound to his chest. So not knowing exactly what's going on, not knowing if there's still an active shooter like at the scene, because that's the call that they got, they just take him out of the house so that they can try to work on resuscitating him, out of the line of fire. So they get him into the yard, they do CPR on him until paramedics arrive, but unfortunately he is pronounced dead at the scene and they're not able to save him. As officers made their way into the house once they determined it was safe to do so, they found that there were 2 more bodies inside the home. These were the bodies of 33-year-old Zohreh and her murderer, 38-year-old Ramin Hodakamrezi, I believe is how you pronounce it. Lord help me. I tried. I even reached out to you guys to see if anybody was from Iran, because they were from Iran, to see if they could help me with pronunciations. I did my best. I'm not even going to try his last name again because it's not for me. And I tried and, I tried my best. And that's all I can do is my best. And basically this man was a long haul trucker from Texas. And it appeared to police that after breaking into the home through an open bedroom window, he went inside and he murdered Zohreh and her husband before turning the gun on himself and taking his own life. Now, how did we get here? Now, there isn't a ton of information out there that's been made public on Zohreh and Milad, whose name was actually Mohammed, but he seemed to have gone by Milad, because the family and the friends of these individuals haven't really been doing interviews and it is still a new case. So I'll just tell you what I was able to put together based on what is out there publicly at this time. I've read that the couple had been married in 2011. They moved to the US and then got married. And I cannot say with certainty where they moved from, though I did see that Milad had grown up in Iran and was actually ranked the 2nd best singer in Tehran in 2007, which is quite an accomplishment. And based on that, and based on the type of podcast that Zohreh did and the language that was spoken in the podcast, which was Farsi, I believe the 2 of them came to the US from Iran. But either way, more information about them. They were both said to be big fans of science fiction, like they were open about loving science fiction, like on their Twitter and things like that. And on their Twitter, you also saw, and like their blogs, you also saw that they were both considered kind of progressive in their beliefs. They were big advocates for women's rights in Iran. Zohreh would post about human rights issues, particularly where the way women in Iran were treated, and would post about her beliefs that would be probably to be considered a little bit liberal, and Milad was the same. He had a blog, and it was mostly to post about like work and technology specifically, but he also wrote about the protests in Iran and talked specifically about 2 women. Well, a girl and a woman. One was 16 and one was 22. The 22-year-old being killed after being detained by the country's, quote, morality police, and the 16-year-old girl ended up being killed during protests that arose after the 22-year-old was murdered. So they posted about this and their outrage towards this whole situation. Now, I mentioned that Milad posted about technology a lot, and that kind of brings us into the next thing about them, and that is that they were both very into technology. They were self-proclaimed techies, which is probably why they lived so close to Seattle, because that's like, the tech capital, and they were both software engineers by trade. Milad studied at the Sharif University of Technology before working hard towards and eventually landing a job at Google in 2017, where he worked for 5 years before he got a job at Amazon in 2022, where he worked as the lead software engineer for Amazon. Zohreh studied in the University of Washington's graduate programs, where she ended up getting her PhD. And she worked at a company called Promontory Mortgage Path, which provided mortgage services, and she worked there helping to write software to help these community banks offer mortgages. She worked remotely at this job, but she was said to be very good at her work and got along with everyone on the team, even though, she was working remote. She was described by her coworker as collaborative, well-organized, and helpful. Now, I am not sure why she left this job, but we do know that in the months prior to her murder, she was looking for a new job. And we know this because one of her previous coworkers has come out and told the media that Zohreh had reached out to her looking for a reference for a new job. So in the meantime, she was working on a podcast. And for the life of me, I cannot find out what the name of her podcast was. It hasn't been listed in any of the articles, and I even looked on Reddit, which is a place I don't really like to go that much because Reddit's freaking crazy. But on Reddit, you couldn't find it either, or at least I couldn't find it either. If you know, please put it in the comments. But basically, this podcast was a podcast on technology. It was a Farsi language podcast on technology and finding a job in the tech industry. And Farsi, or Persian, is the language that is spoken in Iran, which is, that in conjunction with knowing that Milad lived there growing up is why I believe that that's where they moved from when they moved to the US. Now, it was through this podcast that Zohreh met a man, and this was 38-year-old Ramin, the man who would eventually go on to murder her. And there isn't a ton of information on him out there either. I know that he was 38 years old and that he was a truck driver. I know that he was married before. He had been married to a woman named Meshabim, M-E-S-H-A-B-I-M, and that the two were divorced. They had been married for 7 years and had a daughter together, but at the time that the murders took place, they had been divorced for 5 years at that point. Despite the two being divorced, they still maintained a relationship and they were friendly. They would talk about their lives. They would talk about their love lives. They were super open with one another. And this was partially due to the fact that they had both moved to the US from Iran as well. And they didn't have family or friends there. They left everybody when they moved here. So they really only had each other to lean on that had, that common roots, right? Whatever, birds of a feather. So they were still talking because of that, and also because of the fact that obviously, they shared a daughter, so you have to communicate with each other if you want to, have a good co-parenting situation. Records show that Ramin had lived in Los Angeles for a time, but was living in Houston, Texas at the time of the murders, which is not super close to Washington. So, why was he there? Well, even though it sounds weird for somebody to come from Texas to Washington, that wasn't super weird for him because, again, he was a long-haul trucker. He actually owned his own trucking company, okay? And so it wouldn't be that weird for him to be in another state, though they do not know if he was in Washington for work or if he went there specifically to commit these murders. So that's who he is. He is a divorced father with a consistent job, owning his own company with no apparent criminal record. So now let's get into how I knew Zohreh. Zohreh had a podcast, and her, the way her podcast was run is different than podcasts that I have listened to. So basically her audio stream was hosted on an app called Clubhouse, the Clubhouse app. And this is a different type of app that I've never used it before, so I'm not super familiar with it. But from what I read, it dubs itself as, quote, a new type of social network based on voice where people around the world come together, talk, listen, and learn from each other in real time. End quote. So the way I understand it is it was basically a cross from a video chat and a conference call. So people could listen in real time and chat in real time. And this is what Ramin did. He would listen to her podcast. He would chat in real time. They would start to get to know each other. When she first mentioned him to her husband, she said that he was just a new member, a member of a new friend group. But eventually they talked more often and were considered friendly, if not sort of friends. Ramin's ex-wife told the media that he and Zohreh had exchanged numbers, they had talked on the phone a couple times, texted a couple times, and had even met in person a couple of times, though I haven't seen it confirmed that this actually happened, that they met in person, and this could just be what he was telling his ex-wife. We don't really know. But either way, what we do know is that the two met and became friendly towards the end of 2021, and by the end of 2022, things had changed. He had gotten to the point where he was messaging her, constantly, and it got so bad that she was finally okay, I feel like I need to take a step back here. And it was in November of 2022 that she told him, hey, I need you to chill. This is kind of getting out of hand. But He didn't. Instead, he escalated. He would message her more. He would call her more, and he would call her from like various different numbers. Basically what happened is he'd call her from one number, she'd realize it was him and she'd block it. Then he'd call her from another number and she'd block it. So it got to the point that she had it so her phone was blocking all numbers that she didn't know from calling her in an attempt to get him to stop contacting her. But it didn't work. He would still find ways to call her. And it got to the point that he called her up to 100 times a day. She blocked him on all social media, like Telegram? Yeah. WhatsApp, Instagram. She made her Instagram private too so that other people couldn't see it. And he got pissed about this and messaged her and was like, you need to either delete your Instagram or make it public so I can see what's going on. Because he couldn't take like knowing she was there but not being able to see her. And she was like, no, I'm not going to do that, you crazy person. Like, that's not going to happen. But he couldn't take it. So he ended up making like a fake WhatsApp account, which I've never used WhatsApp. So I don't really, or actually have I? Maybe I used it like once. I feel like a friend of mine, I don't know if she wants me to say her name, but I feel like she had me make WhatsApp before so that we could send pictures. But if I've used it before, it's been years. But either way, he made one of those so that he could still contact her. And he ended up sending her 82 messages on that app in one day. He would go as far as following her to a conference she was going to in Denver. He would drive to Seattle and stay at like hotels, motels, Holiday Inns near her home. And he would call her from a local number so that she would know he was in the area. He would drive to her area and park on her street just so that he could hope, in the hopes that he would see her or she would see him, because he was literally on her street, and then he'd be able to talk to her. He would give her gifts. He would like send her gifts, which were called, quote, items of affection, like jewelry, or he would show up at her house with flowers. And in one instance, he even tried to hire a jazz, well, he did. He hired a jazz band to stand outside her house and play music for 2 hours, but then actually changed his mind and decided to cancel it at the last minute. If some man tried to hire a jazz band to play outside my house for 2 hours, are you kidding me? How frustrating. Just play the right notes. You know what I mean? Oh my Lord. And then the messages, right? He would send her incessant messages, and some were loving, but some were dark. In one of the messages, he told her that he would love her forever. And then he told her that he would show up at her house and he would set himself on fire, or he would burn her house down by setting fire to the tree in her yard that she loved. I guess she had a tree in front of her house that she really, really loved. And in this message, he was just like crying hysterically and begging her to call him back or pick up the phone. And said if she didn't do these things, this is what he would do, right? He would set himself on fire or set fire to her tree. That's such unhinged behavior. So she went to the police, which is what else are you going to do? And he did receive a warning in January of 2023, but he didn't stop. If anything, he intensified. Well, obviously he intensified because we're talking about it today. He started reaching out to her more. He started sending her more gifts, one of which was like a neck scarf that police immediately confiscated because they were doing an investigation on this. And he started getting more angry and leaving her angry voicemails. In February of 2023, he sent her, I believe it was 2 different voicemails. And when she listened to them, she described them as, quote, vulgar, angry, and threatening. He also, and this is so weird to me, he sent her a audio clip. And when she listened to this audio clip, she realized that it was like an edited snippet of her own voice. Basically, whenever he would call her, when she would answer the phone, probably in the beginning before she realized that every goddamn call to her phone was him, he would record her voice without her consent. And she said that him recording her without her knowing really gave her just an eerie feeling, and then him to send her this recording gave her an eerie feeling, in conjunction or in addition to all the other bullshit he was putting her through. Which, man, there was an array of shit that he put her through, and not just her, but also her husband and her friends, because she never gave this man, her husband's contact information, her friend's contact information. Why would she do that? But he got it. He would get her friends' phone numbers, her friends' addresses, and he would contact them. He got her husband's phone number, and her husband's, well, obviously he'd have the contact address because he knew that they lived together, but he would contact him over and over. He called him once 50 times in a day. This is her husband, called him 50 times in a day, and then proceeded to text him over and over, sending him 20 messages in a day. And in one of these messages, he told Milad that he, Ramin, would like to kill himself if only he had the nerve to do so. And this isn't the only time that Ramin was, making comments that would show that he was violent or suicidal, because in Zohreh's protection order application, she wrote that in one of the messages that he wrote to her, he told her that the only way he would let her go and stop loving her is if he killed himself or died. So with all of this, Zohreh decided she was going to get a protection order, because this was escalating super fast. Because if you think about it, he got his first warning in January of 2023. She asked him to leave her alone in November of 2022. She got him his first warning in January of 2023, and by March, she was gone. So she petitioned for this protection order, and in it, she wrote out everything that he had done, and that's where we got all the information, for this case. So in Washington, there are 5 different types of protection orders a person can get. There is, a sexual assault protection order. There is a domestic violence protection order. There is an anti-harassment protection order, a stalking protection order, and a temporary protection order, which is like an expedited protection order, right? Extreme risk protection order is the temporary one. Like, you get it only if it's like a big thing, you need protection right here, right now, this is serious. So basically all these protection orders, though, make it so that the person who is requesting the protection order is protected from the person who they're requesting it for. Obviously, the more you know. So she applied, and it's not clear which order she was applying for. Obviously, like, stalking would make the most sense. Anti-harassment would also make a lot of sense, but based on the timeline here and how quickly she was able to actually get the order, I believe that she went for the temporary one, the extreme risk one, because she got the restraining order pretty quickly. And also, like, it seems like her situation is pretty extreme, but it wasn't clear in the reporting which one she actually applied for. In this application, though, she wrote that Ramin, had extreme anger outbursts and was clearly delusional, and that these delusions that he was having made her fearful for her life, but not only her life, also the lives of her loved ones. She was scared, man. She had begged for him to stop. Because of all of this, she had developed insomnia and anxiety, and at the time that she was killed, she had actually just underwent back surgery. So all of this stress and everything going on, she said it was making it hard for her to relax enough to actually heal after her surgery. And she said specifically of this, quote, "All of this has caused me great distress and pain, and now I am suffering from a deep-seated fear for my safety. It has taken a toll on my recovery. I haven't been able to open the curtains in my bedroom out of fear of him outside watching me." She was worried because of her surgery, because I guess her surgery was so, invasive that she required round-the-clock 24/7 care. So she was worried if he was to do anything, she didn't have the mobility or physical ability to protect herself. She asked the court to give her a protection order for 99 years instead of the typical 1-year protection order that one would be given. And she said she wanted this because he, quote, "had shown no indication that he will stop his frightening and dangerous behavior after 1 year." She added, quote, "He has said many times that nothing short of his own death will make him leave me alone. So I would like this order to last as long as possible." So on March 3rd, 2023, a week before the murders, the judge did grant Zohreh a temporary restraining order and set a hearing for a official full restraining order. They just gave her the temporary one while they could, have a hearing and determine if she needed the full order. Ramin was also charged at that time with 1 count of misdemeanor stalking and 2 counts of telephone harassment, and an arrest warrant was issued for him. Now, he wasn't there, obviously. He did not show up, but he was ordered to relinquish all of his weapons. The police just had to find him and serve him with this order now that it was, in writing, so to speak. So they had the paperwork right. They just had to locate him, serve him, and arrest him, but they could not find him. They had the paperwork. They were ready to go, but he was a long-haul trucker, so he was on the road, and they had no idea where he was. Now, it's not clear if Ramin was in Washington for work, how long he had been there, or if he went there specifically with the purpose of murder on his mind, but what we do know is that on March 10th, 2023, he drove to this upscale neighborhood. He entered Zohreh and Milad's home through an open window, and he murdered them. It's just so sad to think about, because remember, Zohreh had just had surgery. She was not able to defend herself from this attack. And another thing is, Zohreh's mother was in the home when this happened. Apparently, when he broke into the house, she had an altercation with him where he shoved her, I guess, but she was able to escape alive, and that's who ran to a neighbor's house and called 911 in the first place. Can you imagine being in the home when your child was murdered? It's just so fucking sad, dude. A neighbor who lived behind the couple actually caught the attack on their video camera, like the audio of the attack on their home video camera. And they went back and listened to it and said that the attack was blood curdling to hear. And they actually seemed to regret going back and listening to the audio in the first place, because it seemed like in the interview that they were kind of traumatized by it. So police arrive, they find the 3 dead, they find a red pickup truck parked on the street that they believe belonged to Ramin and what he drove to get there, and that was towed away. And just like that, it was all done and they were all gone. And it's so sad because it seems like she did everything she could to try to protect herself. This was just very shocking, especially for the area, because this was an area where people did feel safe and could feel safe because normally the area was incredibly safe. These were actually the first murders to take place in this neighborhood in 2 years. The morning of the murders, the mayor posted on the City of Redmond's Facebook page offering, their statement, their thoughts, their prayers. They said that their hearts were heavy in learning about the tragic shooting in their city and asked the whole community to send their thoughts and prayers to the family of the victims. The police chief also made a statement in which he said, quote, "Our hearts go out to the victim's family and the Redmond community following the horrific tragedy. This is an incredibly sad situation and the worst possible outcome of a stalking case. We will continue investigating what led to this tragic loss." Across the board, the sentiment just seemed to be that everyone was shocked. People who knew the family or lived in the area were shocked that it happened at all, and law enforcement was shocked that it went as far as it did because they were familiar with the couple, they were familiar with the house because of the ongoing stalking situation. So they were just blown away that it ended in such a tragic way. Apparently the two were just super great and friendly people. A woman named Jamie came out and apparently she was set to buy a house across the street or like very close by them. And she had come over to, look at the house, meet the neighbors. And when she met the couple, they welcomed her with open arms. And she said specifically of this, quote, "They were just so friendly and inviting. We were like, oh my gosh, we could not have found better neighbors." His ex-wife was shocked too. She said that she could not imagine Ramin going as far as he did and actually murdering 2 people. She said that she knew he was upset. She knew that he had been upset over Zohreh, and she actually said that Ramin told her that the 2 of them had been dating. Apparently, he told his ex-wife that they were dating and that she wasn't married, and that apparently he also told her that they had broken up and that he was really upset about it because he didn't want them to break up, and that after the breakup, he was super upset, that he was taking it very hard, and that in the last couple times that she talked to him, he had been crying a lot over Zohreh. Now, police have never confirmed that the 2 had dated. Of course, they would probably know this based on their investigation. They could look at phone records, messages, things like that. And they have never confirmed that. So that's why I think it's possible that this is just something he was telling his wife to justify his obsession with her. But honestly, we don't know. All we know is what police have said, and they have just said that they were friendly until he got to the point that he was obsessed, and then she cut him off. So I don't know. I don't know if anything happened there. You'll have to let me know what you think down below. But even if it did, right? Let's say that they did have an affair, that they did date, and that she ended it. Him stalking her relentlessly because he was upset that it was over, and then murdering her husband, and taking his own life is just as tragic. And man, they just did everything they could do, right? They called police, they installed security cameras, they got a restraining order, and they're still dead. The chief of police came out actually and spoke about this specifically, saying, quote, "A piece of paper does not protect a person who is intent on causing them harm. This is the absolute worst outcome for a stalking case. This is every victim, every detective, every police chief's worst nightmare." Now, in learning the details about this case, many locals were upset. They were outraged in learning that this had gone on for months and police hadn't done more to protect the couple from this outcome. As a result, a Change.org petition has been set up, and the goal is to hold the city of Redmond accountable and implore them to take concrete steps to prevent such incidences from happening in the future, and to hold those responsible for this tragedy accountable for their lack of proper action. Because it does seem like there were so many opportunities for police to step in here, and they just didn't. And the citizens of Redmond who are in support of this petition want to, quote, "hold the Redmond Police Department directly responsible for failing to recognize and respond to the repeated reports and concerns of the couple regarding their stalker's threatening behavior despite having adequate resources." Now, I'm not sure how the person who set up this petition is related to Zohreh or Milad or their families, but I will put the link down below so you can look it over and see if it's something you want to sign. Because one thing is for sure, and that is that these cases have to be taken more seriously. Stalking cases have to be taken more seriously. According to the Stalking Prevention Awareness and Resource Center, nearly 1 in 3 women have experienced stalking at some point in their lives. And women who were victims, 69% of them were threatened with physical harm, just like Zohreh, but in her case, her stalker followed through. It's just a very tragic case, and with everybody gone and no one left to, answer for this, to be held accountable and to explain themselves, this really does seem to be people's only way to try to get justice for Milad and Zohreh. And with that, my friends, is the story of the stalking and murder of Zohreh and her husband Milad. I hope you found this case to be informative, or at least my presentation of it to be informative, and I hope it made sense. And of course, I just want to thank you for remembering Zohreh and Milad with me today. Now, considering everything I told you during this video, I want to revisit the question of the day, and that was this. How do you think things like this happen? Because in this case, it's like he had other things going for him. He had an ex-wife he was still close to, he had a child to live for, and he became so obsessive that he threw everything away. He killed 2 people. He ended his life, ruined his kid's life. You know what I mean? Like, what causes a person to do this? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments below. Before you leave, please don't forget to leave me a comment down below with a case suggestion that you'd like to see me cover in the future. As you know, I have a long list of cases, and whenever you leave me a suggestion, I put it on my list with your name next to it, so if I cover it, I can give you a shout out. I love looking into the cases you guys suggest, because they're often cases I haven't heard of or cases that need more coverage, and I know you're filled with good ideas and good taste, otherwise you would not be here. If you haven't already, please don't forget to join the Brat Pack by subscribing and ringing the bell. I put out new videos every single week, sometimes 2 a week. All through the month of October, I'm going to be putting out 2 videos a week, and I'd love to hang out with you. Yes, you specifically, you. And if you want to hang out more consistently, all my social media is listed down below for your convenience, along with a link to my membership, where you get early access to non-sponsored videos, priority comment responses, things like that. Now I just want to remind you one more time to download June's Journey through the link in my description box. Supporting my sponsors also supports this channel, and I want to say a big thank you to you guys for always being so supportive of all of my sponsors. You rock, don't ever change. If you heard my baby throughout this video, I apologize. He woke up early from his nap and he is sitting right there eating some watermelon, so you might have heard some little coos. I'm going to try to edit them out, but he's very, very vocal right now. And I just wanted to say that in case anybody's like, what was that? It was Charlie. He is a vocal little boy. But with all of that said now, I just want to thank you for being here when you could literally be anywhere else in the world. That is tight. You are tight. Please stay safe and be a better person than you were yesterday, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye.